Whanau Ora was this idea, and it's one of those ideas that when it's first explained, you go, oh, that's a good idea. And then when you think about it for 5 minutes, you go, no. That's what Whanau Ora is. It's the idea that there are a whole series of Maori, only Maori, or in this particular case they extended it to Pacific Islanders as well. There are a whole series of poor brown people who basically can't look after themselves. Now, I mean, at the heart of it, that's really what it's about. I've always believed that roughly 80% of New Zealand knows what they're doing and 20% doesn't. And it's a bit like when you went to school, and if you think about it just for a moment, you know, you went to school and you were in whatever class you were in, and there was always a special class. Did you have a special class at your school, Josh, or was that?
Yep. Yeah, we did. Yep.
And there was the special class over there. Now, they weren't so special that they were in the IHC facility, which was not on your campus at all. So that was a special IHC campus for people who had significant intellectual or mental health, mostly intellectual problems. But there was always a special class, and the special class was for a group of people. Oh, gosh, at my class, I remember both of my schools, they were an entire classroom. So I guess what's that? 20, 30, 40 kids. I guess closer to 40 than 20, it has to be said. And you always knew that whatever class you were in, and they had their own special teacher in my intermediate in Wanganui. Good God, they had their own special play area for reasons that were a little bit beyond me, certainly as a young boy at an intermediate school who was already a year ahead of his peer group, and so therefore some of the social niceties of my age group just completely passed me by. But I could never understand why the kids in the special needs class, or the special class as we called them, the specials we called them, they weren't allowed to play with us. I never quite got that, and they seemed normal. When I looked at them, they looked like human beings. Their bodies moved roughly the same way. Yeah, there was a bit of somebody might have been a bit disabled and limped a bit, but other than that, they seemed okay, and they were sort of corralled away from the rest of us. Anyhow, cut a long story short, I think most people of my generation experienced those special people. And the idea that if they, needed special attention in special classes and then later on at special schools as well, the idea that those people would then grow up, go through adolescence, become adults and able to look after themselves, that would be beyond heroic assumption stuff. That would be, if you thought like that, you were just a neglectful, negligent person at the end of the day, because clearly they were never able to look after themselves. Who knew? Some of them might have had brain damage, fetal alcohol syndrome, just developmental delays, or which were permanent, which meant that they were unable to, at this age, converse in normal society and would never do so. So I always grew up with the knowledge that there was always going to be a group of people in this country who couldn't look after themselves. All right, that it didn't matter what you did or what you gave to them. You could give them as much money as you like, for God's sake. They still wouldn't have the basics in place. You know, the idea of making their bed, getting themselves something to eat on time, knowing when to wash, knowing to put out the dirty washing, good God, looking after children. These were just feats beyond them at the end of the day. And when they were going to become adults, well, they weren't going to get much better. All right. Well, somewhere along the lines, if we're going to be talking history, about the 1980s, a whole series of, again, not very bright people who were working in, well, organisations like the New Zealand Railways, the Ministry of Works, Forestry, freezing works and the like, and quite happy doing those sorts of jobs. So they were a step up on the specials, freezing works and the like, and quite happy doing those sorts of jobs. So they were a step up on the specials. They lost their jobs as well in the revolution, it's the only word to describe it, of the late 80s, early 90s in New Zealand. It started with Rogernomics, went through Ruthronomics, and in 10 years' time, we just cut those people off completely. So the specials were always going to be special. They're never going to be able to look after themselves. But the people that were those sort of unskilled labour, I guess that's a best way of describing it, who did work, it has to be said, from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, suddenly didn't have a job anymore because, well, we were going to be efficient, weren't we? We weren't going to be subsidising industry anymore. So they ended up basically on the dole and in welfare. And to be honest with you, they and their antecedents, well, not their antecedents, but their descendants, have never ever got off it to this day, which is one of the reasons why we've got 400,000 adult New Zealanders currently on welfare. And many of them, in fact, I would suggest to you most of them, would be multi-generational in terms of their reliance upon the state. And the idea that you're suddenly going to get those people to become bright, innovative, enterprising individuals who work hard, start their own business and pay tax. Again, we go back to the heroic assumption bordering on non-negligence and neglect. Anyhow, I was thinking that, though, this morning because that's what Whanau Ora was meant to deal with. That's why Whanau Ora was created. It was meant to look after those people. And given that the majority of them, but by no means all of them, but the majority of them were brown, Maori and Pacific Island, with no skills, poor education, raised by parents who were pretty much, the word parent would be loosely applied, I guess, to their particular upbringing. That's what Whanau Ora was meant to do. Off we go. And it's a lovely concept. We're going to provide wraparound services so that we can get these people and this whānau and this family, dysfunctional for generations, hasn't been working for a long, long time. We're going to pick them up, uplift their skills, their expectations, their life skills, their ambitions and aspirations, and we're going to turn them into solid citizens who are going to set the world, if not alight, then certainly they're going to play their part as a upstanding member of our New Zealand community. Well, it's a lovely idea. But of course it failed. And of course it's failing. And so what Whanau Ora has largely become is a whole series of relatively smart operators, who are brown also, but whether they're Pacific Islander or Maori, have decided to intercept the money that's meant to be going from the government to providing those wraparound services. And they've decided to convince the government, hey, give it to us, we know what we're doing, because we're the same colour, same culture. Oh, yeah, you are. Yeah, well, what? You white guys, you wouldn't have a clue what you're doing, because, they're our culture. This is our whānau, This is our hapu. So just give us the money, and we know these people because we've raised them. They're not all that smart, but we know how they operate because we come from that background. I said the white policy makers and politicians, here's a big tranche of money, hundreds of millions of dollars going through Whanau Ora. To this day, you can't find any statistics that Whanau Ora have been in operation now for, almost 15, 20 years, but almost certainly for over 15 years, has made a blind bit of difference to the plight of dysfunctional brown families on whānau and individuals in this country at all. There are no empirical stats. There's nothing to say that that New Zealand's received value for money, or that all those people are any less dysfunctional, any less unable to look after themselves, and any less dependent upon welfare than, they were 15 years ago when you first started all this nonsense. But I will tell you, there's a group of very smart Pacific Island Maori operators, what I call the Maori traders, if you like. They were always smart. Who just saw an opportunity, and went, you mean they give us money? Yeah. And we can get a flash car? Yeah. And we can get a really flash salary? Yeah. And we can just write all this crappy report at the end of the year that says we're doing this whole holistic stuff? Yeah. And they'll believe us? Yeah. Show me the way. And the money, by the way. And that's what happened. And so when you look at, the Waiparera Trust and John Tamahiri and the Manurewa Marae, tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. All of those who have been receiving or are the managers, the gatekeepers of the Whanau Ora funding, they've done very well out of this. They're staying in hotels, they're going away for weekends to Queenstown, they're flying to Australia, Rarotonga, they're going to all these places. Turn around and look at the people that they're helping, and how many of them have they got off that particular lifestyle, that dependent welfare, how many of them have made the transition as a consequence of that intervention? And all the hundreds of millions to be up to billions of money, how many of them have made the difference? Answer, probably that many. And to be honest with you, when I say probably that many, I'm probably exaggerating the numbers. And by the way, I held up a 0.